What's up, people? Today we're going to do a season preview of the 2019 Australian Superbike Championship. Welcome back, Andrew Gosling. Today, instead of talking about cameras and photography, we're going to talk about racing, the other side of things. This last weekend we had the season launch test, first official test for the Australian Superbike Championship. We covered all the primary classes in that championship. I think it's a really good time with just a couple of weeks to go. That we have a look at that and see what we can find out, what we might be able to make of the season ahead. So let's start with the Supersport 300/R3 Cup. We'll just basically look at it from a Supersport 300 perspective. It's a bit hard because they're sort of mixed in together to get a read on the R3 Cup. The fastest rider over the test on the 300s was actually Tom Bramage, but since he's not running the series this year, he wasn't classified. His 1:48.804 was about almost half a second fastest than the regular series guys. But he's heading off to run the World Championship, the World Supersport 300 Championship. So hopefully he'll do quite well. We'll see in a little while. They don't start running until the series gets back to Europe. Of the regular runners, Seth Crump was the fastest. He did a 1:49.249. He was consistent across all the practice sessions, and so he's looking pretty good. There's a few standouts that he pretty much picked from the start. They've been with a couple of guys having left the class. There's still some fairly consistent runners there who have been there for a couple of years now and are stepping up. Seth Crump's certainly one of them. Lockie Taylor, Max Stauffer, Zach Levy, Callum O'Brien are names that you just know that they're going to be there, and they are all there. They're all within the top 10. And as it turns out, the top 12 riders all were within 1 second of each other. Pretty much what you expect of this class. They will be going into turn 1, 10 abreast. They'll be coming onto the main straight 10, 12 to a pack. There are still some riders who weren't there, but of those that were, I think season long you'll see Seth Crump, Lockie Taylor, Zach Levy, young Senna Aegis, who I don't know that he's actually raced Production 300 in Australia. He may have a couple of years ago. He's been off racing Asia Road Race Series, I believe, last year. He certainly came back, and he was third fastest overall for the test. So he's certainly going to be up there. It's just going to be a crazy series again. Picking a winner, as I say, I think your top 5 in no particular order will be Seth Crump, Lockie Taylor, Senna Aegis, Max Stauffer, Zach Levy. I think they'll all be there fighting it out, but the top dozen could easily take the championship. Very hard to make predictions on that one, just because of how wild and how. My guess is that come the first round we'll have 40 bikes out there, so be good to see. Moving on to Supersport 600. Supersport 600 has been sort of a class that I kind of wonder where it's going in terms of where it sits now, and this is not just in Australia, this is at world level. The 600 market isn't what it used to be, but it's looking at the test. It's going to be a very, very competitive championship. There's some really good young talent there. There's some talent that's got some experience, and that showed through. Clearly, Tom Taparis, who was almost a second fastest at the top of the timesheet, is also probably the most experienced, has got really good backing, is very, very capable of taking this championship out. That said, there are another half a dozen riders at least who I expect, who either were there and on good pace, or who we will see coming in as the series comes along. Ones that stand out are Nick Leamington, Brock Pearson, Reed Batty stepping up from 300s, was finished fifth fastest, and was only, well, he was a couple of seconds off the pace, but he, it's his first run basically on the 600. I expect to see those guys and guys like Ty Lynch, maybe Scott Nicholson, also stepping up as the season goes on. Obviously, the most interesting new rider into the 600 class has to be Ollie Bayliss. He finished third overall and was only 200th of a second slower than Nick Leamington. He was about a second, just over a second slower than Tom Taparis. But I think we're going to see this year a much more competitive championship than last year. Last year, Crew Halliday had both the experience, the team backing. He had it all, right there. Like he was right. His experience level alone was significantly more than anyone else. So he had a really good shot at the championship, and I think this year Tom Taparis clearly is the most experienced rider amongst those. He's been in the championship the longest. Nick Leamington's missed some time. Ollie's brand new. Brock Pearson is still only new to the championship in reality. It will be his third year, but unfortunately he's missed, actually no, it'll only be his second year. He was on the 300 in 2017. So it's his second year in the championship. Unfortunately, due to a very nasty accident at Tailem Bend last year, he missed a period of time. So the fact that he's fourth and competitive, I expect to see him right up there battling out for the championship as the year goes on. I don't know how many more there'll be as we come into the first round, but I think we've got a good championship there. Now, Superbikes. Superbikes promises this year to be the best championship we've had, maybe ever. Certainly in many, many, many years. We've got a number of factory backs, 4 or 5 full factory back teams. We have got some of the best riders that we've had in the championship in a very, very long time. I might look through the teams individually and look at how they sit, what they have both as things going for them, and maybe in some cases some challenges. And I'll give a top 5 in no particular order come the end of the season. Fastest rider across the weekend test was Wayne Maxwell. Now, this was something of a surprise to me. Wayno, not that Wayno was fast, but that Wayno was fast given that he broke his collarbone within the last 2 weeks. I think it's about 2 weeks. Still, still getting treated for it. So the fact that he was fastest and consistently fast across the season, across the practice sessions, he wasn't just fast in one practice session. So I think Wayno he's back on the Suzuki. He's back into the Phil Tate and Run team. Last time he raced for a Phil Tate and Run team, he won the championship. I think the atmosphere in the team, the quiet, relaxed way the team is run will help him this year. And the fact that he is fast and consistent and injured is very impressive. The Suzuki team is very, very strong because with Wayno and with Josh Waters, Josh Waters was 4th fastest in the test, again consistent across all the sessions, and there was only a couple of few tenths in the time differences. So you've got two extremely strong riders, very good team backing them. They are certainly going to be a threat for the championship this year. Possibly without a doubt, the biggest surprise from the weekend had to be the performance of Aidan Wagner. We haven't seen Aidan Wagner racing in Australia, I believe. I'm trying to think. I reckon he ran on the Honda a few years ago. Can't remember exactly when. He did some stand-in rides, I believe, maybe MotoGP support race. I can't remember exactly what. But the last time he regularly raced in Australia was on a Supersport bike. He's since then been over in Europe, suffered some injuries, had some tough times, and he's come back and he's put himself second on a privateer bike. So if he can remain consistent throughout the season, he is going to be a huge threat to be in. He's definitely in my top 5. And the other thing, as a side point, is come the end of the year, I can see there being a few currently factory supported riders who may need to be looking over their shoulder. He's very experienced. He's got world level experience, and if he can do this on a privateer bike, that is very impressive. Third fastest was Troy Bayliss, 50 this year, and still insanely fast, like 300th of a second off fastest time on the older Ducati. What's going to be interesting for Troy across the season is they have the new bike coming, which they will probably be on at Wakefield Park for the second round. Maybe not until the tail and bend. Depends. There's a lot of bits still missing that they have to get, the fairings and various other bits and pieces that have to be put together before the bike's on track. So changing bikes partway through a season is always you never quite know which way it's going to go. The bike could come out and it could be the best thing ever, or you could suddenly struggle and you might take steps backwards before you take steps forward. So there's that probably puts the largest question mark over Troy for the season. Not so much over him, but over the way the new bike will go. going to be interesting to see though. I'm going to miss the sound of the Ducati, the twin. It's hearing that thing start up. Yeah, V4, not quite going to be the same. Fifth fastest was Daniel Fousen on the Yamaha. Yamaha this year have gone probably for a younger, although Crew's in his early 30s, but Crew and Daniel. Crew stepping back up from the 600s after a very successful year, and Daniel taking on his second year on the factory Yamaha. I think this year Daniel, I think he'll be more consistent. He's got some new people in the team. Yamaha in general has had something of a change around. A few people have gone. Jeff Dillon notably. That's going to be a big loss to them in terms of bike preparation. But solid team, very solid riders. Sixth fastest with Troy Herfoss. Now, he was still only, what are we looking at, 7/10 off the pace, so close to a second. But honestly, I don't really take that much. I mean, this is the same with all testing. You can never take too much out of it because you're never quite sure what's being tested and what programs people are running through. I fully expect that Troy is going to be right up there. He was still consistent across the whole sessions. He was, in the 133s, 132s for the whole test. So he'll be there. Seventh was Brian Starring. Brian, I rate very highly as a rider. Where he's going to struggle is where he's struggled in the past. They're on Dunlop tyres versus the other leading runners on Pirellis. And it's not really a case of, Dunlops are bad tyres. It's just some tyres are going to suit different tracks better. And I fully expect to see Brian, I expect to see Brian win a race this year at least, maybe even several races. But how he'll go across the season, last year he was either right up there or struggling a little bit. And the problem is because the series and because the level is so close now, being a couple of tenths off really, can put you, 5th, 6th, 7th place. So be interesting to see how the Dunlop tyres work. They could be phenomenal and they could be the tyre to have, and he could win the championship. Brian as a rider certainly has that potential. The other notable is Glenn Allerton on the BMW. This one, they not only are doing the same as Ducati, they will have a new bike. Again, most likely at Wakefield Park, but possibly as late as Tailem Bend. They've also made the decision to switch to Dunlop tyres. Is it a good move? Is it not? Time will tell. But they have to both develop a new bike and adapt to new tyres. So they've given themselves an extra level of work. But on the other hand, they have a really good team. They have guys in there that know what they're doing, so they can make it work. And it's going to be interesting to see how the new BMW goes. It looks like a bit of a weapon. Interesting rider who turned up was Mike Jones. He was consistent for the whole season, for the whole test. Struggled early on a little to get the bike sorted. Had a few issues, but ended up with a good solid time in the high 133s. So that certainly bodes well for him. What he's going to do for the season, we don't know. At this stage, I believe he doesn't have anything sorted for Europe, or there's some questions over what's happening there. So he may end up back in Australia racing the championship, which for the Australian Championship would be very good. It'd be great to see Mike Doe back over in Europe on a good bike, because we certainly know that he's got the ability, he's got the talent to make it work. But it's tough in Europe, where Australia's on the wrong side of the world for making it easy to be in Europe and ride. As we go back down, we come into riders that are either privateers, new riders to the class, new riders to teams, and there's some interesting ones amongst that. Mark Chiodo is one that I think, as the year goes on, will develop well. He does crash a lot. He crashed a lot when he was on the Triumph, but towards the end of the second year that he was on the Triumph, he pretty much became unbeatable. I remember going to Sydney that year, and he'd been struggling, crashing a lot. It all clicked at Sydney. He won 2 races, went on to Phillip Island, won 2 races. He's definitely got the talent. It's just getting it all to work together. Unfortunately, he had a crash, I think it was in the last session, caught a false neutral, going up to Lukey and barrel rolled the bike. Surprisingly, did very little damage to himself and very little damage to the bike, which is good. Arthur Sissis, very experienced rider. He's raced Moto 3, World Championship Moto 3. He's on a privateer bike, but he has the honour of leading the very first race, Australian Superbike race ever, into the first turn at Tailem Bend. He's raced Speedway and has got the most amazing starts, and so that he can never have that taken away from him. He led the very first Superbike race into Turn 1 at a new circuit. I expect that he's going to be there consistent and will do as much as can be done with the bike that he's got. With a better bike, I think he could certainly do more, but he's got what he's got at this point in time. Max Croker is stepping up from Supersport onto Superbike, which I think is a good thing. He's very tall. He was very competitive on the Supersport bike, but he was looking fairly uncomfortable. The Superbike, he seems to fits that bike better, and again, he was low 134 times, so that's pretty impressive for somebody he's run the bike a few times, but it's basically a privateer operation run by Matt Mladen Racing. So I think he's certainly one of the stars of the future. Sloane Frost, was just good to see Sloane Frost get some laps. Last year must have been one of the worst. If he didn't have bad luck, he wouldn't have had any luck at all last year. There were times when he would turn up at a race and struggle to even do a lap. Just stupid mechanical issues mostly, but he turned some decent laps, and I think he'll be there. He'll be consistent. He's a very good rider. He'll be there. Ted Collins, second year on the BMW. He did better certainly than I thought he might do when he came off the 600. He was very consistent, and as I say, he did very well moving from the 600. This year he's got to he's got to build on that. Again, he's now got to learn to switch tyre, new tyres, new bike coming. So we'll see how he goes. It'll be interesting to watch his development. Alex Phillips. Alex will have, I believe, he will have a bike that is the same spec as both Wayne and Josh Waters, Wayne Maxwell and Josh Waters. He didn't have that at the test. The bike's just not ready, but he will, when it comes time to go racing, have the full spec bikes that they had. So I expect to see him much higher up than the 16th place that he was in the test. So I'm expecting a lot more of him than that. Probably the other disappointment was Glenn Scott. He's definitely far better rider than 17th, and I think that he will. They've got a good little team there, well presented, know what they're doing, and I think he'll be. I think he'll be much more up into the top 10 once we start to go racing. Okay, so who do I think is going to win the championship this year? This is probably going to sound like a cop-out, but I don't know. It's so tight at the top that the best I'm prepared to do is give a top 5 in no particular order, and looking at even at the top 5 that I'm going to give, there are other riders who could easily work their way into that top 5. But my top 5, Wayne Maxwell, Josh Waters, Troy Bayliss, Troy Herfoss, and I'm going to put Aidan Wagner in there, because I honestly think that based on the times and the consistency that he had across the test, he's got a really good chance of getting on the podium and even winning some races potentially. And I think he will be there across the whole season. He's got experience, so I think he can do that. That's my top 5, but you could easily chuck in Crew or Daniel into that mix. But I'll stick with those. I'll stick with that top 5 for now. I've got questions over both the Kawasaki and the BMW, running different tyres to the rest of the pack. Again, I'm not saying bad tyres. It's just that you always take a risk when you run a tyre, or you run a component like a tyre that's different to the majority. You've just got this extra factor that can work really well for you or can work horribly against you, and it depends. If you go to a circuit and you're running the same tyres as the guy next to you, it's one thing that you don't have to question. But it could work. It could work amazingly well. Next Gen could get the new BMW, and they could be right out there. They could easily, we could come to Wakefield Park, new bike, bang, different world altogether. The bike they're on at the moment is quite old. I think it's probably now the oldest bike out there. So I probably reserve my judgment on them until they get the new bike and start to get a handle on it. Other than that, I think with luck we should go into the season with most of the top riders decently healthy. Wayne's proven that the collarbone injury that he's got is not slowing him down. There's a few other people with some bumps and bruises, but nothing terribly significant. So that's a good way to start the season. We're just we're just 2 and a bit weeks off the Thursday of World Superbike weekend. These boys will be out on track, and we'll get to see a few extra riders that weren't there. Guys like Matt Walters will be there, and I expect him to be good and solid as he always is. He appears to have some more support from Kawasaki this year, so that's a good thing. Overall, though, the level of the championship has never been. I don't believe it's ever been this strong. I don't believe that it's certainly been a very long time when you can look down through 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 riders and go, these guys can all be within the top half dozen on any given day. So I'm looking forward to the season. Hopefully you'll both watch the series, watch my travels through that series. I'll probably do some more preview, maybe some wrap type videos. I'll also be doing more videos around the tracks to give you an idea of what the different circuits look like. Hopefully I'll be able to do a couple more similar to what I did with Tail and Bend last year, and do some more videos around photography and racing, and that's my plan anyway. Okay, that's it for this time. If you like this video, give it a like, hit subscribe, notify. Again, leave me some comments. I'm interested in what you would like to see me make videos about. I've got a bunch of ideas coming up. Hopefully while I'm at World Supers, I'm planning quite a reasonably detailed video on my workflow and on the computer hardware that I use. Still have to do a video related to the various lighting and that sort of thing that I use. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. As I say, like, subscribe, notify, do all those things, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.